precisely 1:15. This is the news on Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News is edited by Anjana Lianarachi and read by Sabrina Zawahir. First, the headlines. Rapid antigen tests at exit points of WP from today. 6 Gramadildari divisions in Trincomalee district isolated. Sri Lanka sees highest daily spike as new cases soar above 1,400. Foreign Ministry temporarily limits consular services. Chinese Defense Minister departs after official visit. And in world news, Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins dies at 90. And in sports news, the second test cricket match between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh begins. Now the local news in detail. Random rapid antigen tests will be performed at 12 entry and exit points from and to the Western Province on individuals from 12 noon today until further notice. Police spokesman Deputy Inspector General Ajit Rohana said the police and armed forces will erect special barricades in collaboration with the Health Ministry at 12 exit and entry points of Western Province. Accordingly, antigen tests will be done at Topua Bridge at Kochikade, Badalagam Bridge at Heldenia, Helagala Junction in Itambua, Girula Bridge in Mirgama, Samanabadda Bridge in Dompe, Vahabura Bridge in Hanwella, Bentara in Alutkama, Tianawal Junction in Katarakadala Bridge in Ingiriya, Samandewala Point in Baduralia, Avitha Bridge in Migahatanna, and the Valipanna interchange on the Southern Expressway. Random antigen tests are done in order to identify the COVID patients in order to prevent spreading of the deadly virus to other areas and within Western Province, DIG Rohana said. 6 Grama Niladari divisions in Trincomalee district have been placed under isolation order with immediate effect, says the commander of Sri Lanka Army General Shavendra Silva. Thereby, the following Grama Niladari divisions will be isolated until further notice: Upuveli Police Area in Sumedagampura Grama Niladari Division, Trincomalee Police Area Mudovi Grama Niladari Division, Kovilkade Grama Niladari Division and Linganagar Grama Niladari Division, China Bay Police Area and Kavitakuda Grama Niladari Division and China Bay Grama Niladari Division. With a spike in COVID infections, Sri Lanka's daily cases count stayed above the grim milestone of 1,000 for the second consecutive day on yesterday. The Health Ministry initially confirmed 988 new coronavirus positive cases earlier today and 463 more later in the day. Following the new development, the island nation has recorded 1,466 fresh cases of coronavirus within the day, making the highest single-day spike in positive cases. Government Information Department said 32 of the new infections were from the prison cluster, 15 were arrivals from foreign countries, and the remaining 1,419 were associates of the Paliagoda cluster. According to official figures, Sri Lanka's confirmed coronavirus cases count now stands at 104,953, and 9,209 active cases are still under medical care at treatment centers and hospital. Number of patients who recovered from the virus infection, meanwhile, sits at 95,083. Sri Lanka has also witnessed 661 deaths since the outbreak of the pandemic last year. This news is brought to you by Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing more on local news, Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced on yesterday that the services provided by its Consular Affairs Division will be limited due to the prevailing COVID-19 situation, the recent health guidelines issued by the government. In a statement, the ministry said it will prioritize the services provided by the Consular Affairs Division to those in urgent or genuine need in the coming weeks. The consular services expect the cases of deaths of Sri Lankans overseas and attestation of export documents and other related certificates are done strictly by appointment only, the statement noted. In order to make an appointment beforehand, the general public can contact the Consular Affairs Division via telephone. That would be 0112 335 942 or 0112 338 836 or its official email address consular@mfa.gov.lk. Chinese State Consular and Defense Minister General Wei Fenghe has left Sri Lanka this morning following his 2-day official visit. The Chinese Defense Minister arrived in Sri Lanka on Tuesday night. Upon arrival, General Wei Fenghe was received by a Sri Lankan defense delegation led by Defense Ministry Secretary General Kamal Gunaratne at the Bandaranaike International Airport. Chinese Ambassador in Sri Lanka Chi Xing-hong, Chief of Defence Staff and Army Commander General Shavendra Silva, Navy Commander Vice Admiral Nishantha Ulugeratana, Air Force Chief of Staff, Air Vice Marshal Prasanna Payal, Chinese Embassy officials and senior military officers were also present to receive General Fenghe. On Wednesday morning, the Chinese Defence Minister called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo. Upon concluding the meeting with the Sri Lankan President, he said the bilateral discussions were extremely fruitful and that the relations between the two nations were further strengthened by this visit. Later in the day, General Fenghe held two-way talks with Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. With that, we end the local news. The main news story follows.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
State Minister Sudhashini Fernandapillai told that the public cannot choose the coronavirus vaccine they want and instead must go with what is given to them of primary health care epidemics and COVID disease control. Sri Lanka has so far used the AstraZeneca Covishield vaccine while stocks of the Chinese Sinopharm vaccine are currently in Sri Lanka, awaiting clearance to be used on locals. Fernandapillai said that the Sputnik V vaccine purchased from Russia is scheduled to arrive in Sri Lanka soon. Asked by Daily Mirror if the public have a right to choose what vaccine they want to use, Fernandapillai said that this was an option as yet. She also said the government is hopeful it will receive enough stocks to inoculate people who received the AstraZeneca vaccine as the first jab, as they had to be given the AstraZeneca for the second dosage, as vaccines could not be mixed. That was our main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
In Watchlight, police have arrested a 19-year-old youth from Kahatapitiya in Gampola for spreading false news on social media. Police spokesman Deputy Inspector General Ajit Rohana said the youth was arrested while investigations were being carried out based on information received from the intelligence services. The mobile phone of the youth has also been taken into police custody. That was Watchlight. A bulletin of world news follows.
World News. Brought to you by courtesy of
the best discount in this Urdu season, People's Leasing Polybasi. Enjoy an interest rebate of 25% from People's Leasing for all the leasing facilities during this Urdu season. Call 011-206-300 for more details. Conditions apply.
People's Leasing, the trusted leader.
The headlines of the world news. India's state elections go ahead as deaths hit record high. President of America pitches once-in-a-generation investment to Congress. China launches first module of new space station. Now the world news in detail. People in the Indian state of West Bengal are voting in the final phase of elections despite a rising caseload. Long queues were seen outside polling booths, raising concerns about the further spread of COVID amidst a deadly second wave sweeping the country. Experts already fear that West Bengal could be the next epicenter of the virus, given the fact that campaigning has continued there with large crowds. It had more than 17,000 cases in the last 24 hours, its highest spike. The state has already seen 7 phases of voting. The eastern state is one of the few where Prime Minister Narendra Modi does not have a majority of seats. U.S. President Joe Biden has laid out sweeping proposals for jobs, education, and social care in his first speech to a joint session of Congress. Delivered on the eve of his 100th day in office, the Democratic pitched plans involving some $4 trillion in spending, the largest overhaul of U.S. benefits since the 1960s, analysts say. China has launched the first module of a new permanent space station, the latest in Beijing's increasingly ambitious space program. The Tianhe module was launched from the Wenchang Space Launch Center on a Long March 5B Y2 rocket. China hopes to have the new station operational by 2022. Currently, the only space station in orbit is the International Space Station ISS, from which China is excluded. Michael Collins, one of the 3 new crew members of the first manned mission to the moon, Apollo 11, in 1969, has died aged 90, his family say. He died on Wednesday after a valiant battle with cancer. He spent his final days peacefully with his family by his side, they said. Collins had stayed in lunar orbit as his colleagues Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. Aldrin, 91, is now the only surviving member of the mission. With that, we conclude the world news. Prior to concluding, the headlines of the world news once again. India state elections go ahead as deaths hit record high. President of America pitches once-in-a-generation investment to Congress. China launches first module of new space station. With that, we conclude the world news. The development news follows.
World News. Brought to you by courtesy of
The best discount in this Urdu season, People's Leasing Polywasi. Enjoy an interest rebate of 25% from People's Leasing for all the leasing facilities during this Urdu season. Call 011-206-300 for more details. Conditions apply.
People's Leasing, the trusted leader.
In development news, self-driving vehicles could be allowed on UK roads by the end of this year, the government has said. The Department for Transport said automated lane-keeping systems would be the first type of hands-free driving legalized. The technology controls the position and speed of a car in a single lane, and it will be limited to 37 kilometers per hour. But insurers have warned the government's definition of automated lane-keeping systems as self-driving is misleading. Previously, the government has said these new laws would be in place by spring this year and told the BBC there was no delay in its suggested time frames. That was the development news. Next up is the sports news. Taking a look at the sports news, today is the first day of the second test between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh at Pallekele International Stadium in Kandy. Sri Lanka won the toss and chose to bat first. Sri Lanka was 71 for no loss a short while ago. Sri Lanka cricket captain Dimut Karunaratne scores 5,000 test runs today at the second test match played against Bangladesh. Dimut achieved this feat in his 72 match. He has scored 11 centuries and 25 half-centuries, with 244 scored in the last test match being his highest score ever. That was sports news. Next up is the business news.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
Samsung Electronics has announced its strongest first quarter profit since 2018 on the back of strong mobile sales led by its flagship Galaxy S21 line. The Korean giant's net profits rose 46.3% compared to the same quarter in 2020 to 7.1 trillion won. Sales of television and home appliances saw strong growth buoyed by continued stay-at-home demand. However, the company's profits were dented by disappointing results for its chips businesses. That ends business news.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
In economic news, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has declared a special half-day bank holiday for tomorrow due to the leave of May Day, which falls on a Saturday. Meanwhile, Colombo Stock Exchange says market will be closed at 12:30 p.m. on Friday in view of the additional half holiday on account of the May Day falling on a Saturday. That ends economic news. Next up is the weather report. Finally, it's a look at the weather report. The Met Department said that the showers or thunder showers will occur at several places in central Sabaragamuwa, southern Uva, north central and eastern provinces, and in Vaunia and in Mullaitivu districts during the evening or night today. Showers will occur in western and southern coastal areas during the morning. Fairly heavy rainfalls above 50 millimeters can be expected at some places in Uva, central and southern provinces, and in Batticaloa and Ampara districts. The Met Department has urged the general public to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. That was the weather report. Prior to concluding this bulletin of news, the headlines once again. Rapid antigen tests at exit points of Western Province from today. 6 Grama Niladari divisions in Trincomalee district isolated. Sri Lanka sees highest daily spike as new cases soar above 1,400. Foreign Ministry temporarily limits consular services. Chinese Defense Minister departs after official visit. With that, we conclude the news.